Let me start by saying good evening to Rival Chattergoon, the president of the Arima Business Association, Surinja Maraj, the president of the Greater Tunapuna Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Vivek Charad, president of the San Juan Business Association, Rajiv Dipti, the president of the Supermarkets Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, Maxine Attong, our knowledgeable and highly esteemed panelist and speaker, our specially invited guests, and of course to you, our participants in this online business forum, COVID-19, Business Leadership in the New Normal. So my name is Desmond Lawrence, and of course, before moving forward, I just want to brief you on a couple of things. Maxine has broken up her presentation into 3 short parts, so you can ask your questions orally at the end of each session. She will allow for that. Also, in between, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, I mean, questions pop up and you may not be able to keep them in mind right through, you can feel free to post them in the chat facility and I'll be sure to relay them to her. I think she might be able to see them as well. I'm not sure, but for sure, you can post them in the chat facility and they would be addressed. So tonight's discussion is quite interesting. It segues perfectly from last Thursday's discussion, as many of the salient recommendations raised in that forum could only be implemented with the blessings and oversight of astute, competent, and adaptive leadership. And secondly, I saw something written by an online contributor to Forbes magazine recently. It stated, in part, that in the midst of a crisis like this, organizations need leaders who can act and people who trust each other. Instead, we have gotcha cultures where people are afraid to do anything, afraid to even talk about doing anything without assurances that they won't get into trouble for breaking a standard that was set years ago that is no longer relevant to the realities of today, end quotes. So it seems that for many organizations around the world, that this COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted a previous one, a leadership one, as the article went on to describe. Today's discussion is about leadership moving forward in the new normal, moving forward COVID-19, business leadership in the new normal. So to this end, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our feature speaker. She's very well known, and I had to try to to curtail her bio a bit, but let me just mention the more salient things. Maxine Attong partners with leaders, including those bogged down by operational issues, to create highly effective self-managing teams so that leaders can deliver more on their strategic intentions. She is a Gestalt trained certified professional facilitator, a PCC level executive coach, and organizational development specialist who leverages her 20 plus years of organizational excellence to serve the needs of leaders and their teams. And through coaching, workshops, and speaking, Maxine assists clients to excel at leadership, build better relationships, develop effective and productive teams, and design and implement strategies and improve businesses. She is also the author of 2 business books, and she's the president of the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and the founder of the Gestalt Caribbean Leadership Seminar, which is hosted in Trinidad, Barbados, and St. Lucia. And of course, you can check her every evening, every Wednesday evening. She hosts a radio show called Leadership Unlearned on I-95.5 FM. And she has a podcast with the same name. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Miss Maxine Attong.
Hi, Desmond. Great to be here with you this evening. And thanks for introducing me. So just welcome to all the participants on the call. And today I'm going to talk about leadership. And leadership for me is really a topic that I'm really interested in, because I think, we've been through all of the cycles of where it was that our product was important, our service was important. And I think it's usually about the tools of production, right? So it's about the resources, the capital, the investment, the people. And I think what is really needed for us to push forward at this point in time is leadership. I think that's what makes the difference between a good company and a great company. I think that's what makes the difference between a profitable company and a superlatively profitable company. So I'm really excited to talk about this. And Desmond did mention my program, and that is exactly what I explore in the program. And I usually say that leadership happens at 3 levels: of systems within organizations. Also, to be very clear, when I speak about leadership, I'm speaking about leadership on all levels in all our spheres of life. We do not only display leadership in an organization, we practice in our homes as fathers, mothers, brothers, the most responsible kid. We do it in our churches. We also practice it in our communities as well. And whatever groups that you belong to, it could be with your friends. Sometimes somebody stands up as the leader and sort of takes charge or makes suggestions about how to go forward. So today when I talk to you, I'm doing exactly what Desmond said. I'm going to break this up into 3 segments. I'm going to talk about leadership as an organization. I'm going to talk about leadership in terms of leading a team of people. And I'm going to talk about the most important one for me is self-leadership. Because how do we lead others if we can't lead ourselves? So before I go into it, I just want to invite you to just think a little bit about what you've been going through over the last 6 weeks with COVID-19, because this is the context in which we're speaking about leadership today. So I'd just like you to think about what you did differently in your business over the last 6 weeks. And it could be as simple as closing our doors because we were required to with a stay-at-home order. It could be that during that time you thought about how to do things differently. Maybe you offered a little online service and delivery services. So just think about that a little bit. And now that we know that the economy is slowly reopening, what are the things that you want to leave behind before COVID? What are the things you want to embrace now going forward with your business? And what are the things you want to experiment with? And I use the word experiment quite deliberately because we have grown up knowing that there's a formula for everything. We've been pretty secure and pretty safe in Trinidad and Tobago. So we know that if you put money here, this is the return you will get. We know that if you sell things at X price, this amount of people will buy. And I think COVID for us in the last 40 years has been really the introduction of complexity, where things are not as we predicted it to be. Most of us in organizations, we have a vision, we have a strat plan, we have goals and objectives, and we know that if we pump enough resources, we'd usually get some kind of return on that. And along comes COVID and says, regardless of what you would have done, how great you are, how well business is doing, guess what? I'm here to tell you that all of those things are irrelevant. So the offer, of course, is to you to ask yourselves, what is relevant in my organization? And so when we talk about relevance, we start at the very top. And at the very top would be our vision, our mission statements. So my questions around those for you would be, when last did you look at your vision statement or your mission statement? After COVID, is it relevant? And for me, that is a big question, because if we have been operating with a vision that we haven't looked at 5 years ago, even if we crafted it last year, things have changed and they've changed forever. So what are you going to do about that? Do you want to craft a vision statement? Is it really relevant? Most of us would have had a strategic plan or a business plan going forward. Are those strategies even relevant? Can we really achieve them in this new scenario? So I like to think about COVID as a real opportunity to break patterns, to break the things that we did sort of like a knee-jerk reaction as leaders, as business people who own operations. And I used the word experiment before because the excitement for me with this post-COVID and this new normal, because it means the things that we didn't do before, we now have a blank canvas on which we can paint our new reality. And more so than ever, we get to decide how we're going to do it. And when I say decide here, I know that everybody makes decisions every day about their business. And I know for a lot of us, we follow business models that were not created by us. We have been mimicking what other people do. I mean, that is part of the life of the Caribbean. We've been learning about leadership mainly from white American males. And here we are where everybody in the world was faced with the same issue and nobody knew what to do. So who can tell you how to lead your organization? Nobody can. You get to choose what you need to do. And when I invited you to think about your lessons from COVID, I was really asking you about how did you use staff during COVID, those of us who took our businesses home or where our employees worked from home? What processes in your organization may now be redundant? What technology have you seen that is missing from your organization to make it function better? And so when I speak about this blank canvas, the invitation is there for you. In our Trinidadian setting, in Tunapuna, in Arima, wherever it is that your grocery or business resides, what are you going to do differently to take advantage of everything that is happening right now? So one of the obvious answers for me is about digitization of our businesses. And of course, those of us who have retail, to take our retail business online, fully online. Amazon has the model, Alibaba has the model. It means that somebody here could actually build those sites for us, or we import labor from wherever in the world because it's a small world, and we get those things rolled out. So instead of people WhatsApping us a grocery list, what would it be like for us to take our store really online? Because COVID is a test run, and COVID is an introduction to the complexity of the world that we will continue to face. It's not going to change. Life is not going to be normal. We are always going to be impacted by changes in the wider world, and this was a test run. So if you've survived it and you feel pretty good about yourself right now, congratulations. If it is that you still have a lot of anxiety and you're dealing with it, then your lessons will come a little later. So when I talk about organizations and what I would like to see from leadership of organizations and organizations, businesses, small, medium enterprises, mom and pop, just me working as a consultant, everybody who has 1 to 5 employees, 100, however many. One of the things that I know is that most of us in Trinidad and Tobago are employed by some sort of organization. As a consultant, I depend on organizations to hire me. People who have parlors or offer a service, whether it's a spa service or, handmade flowers or butterflies, they also depend mainly on people who work in organizations because these are the people who have disposable income. And so there is a big responsibility on organizations and the leadership on organizations about where this country is going. And I always say to leaders in organizations, listen, when you impact your team members go home and they impact the people in their homes, they impact the people in their communities. And if we want Trinidad and Tobago to be better, then the people who own businesses need to be better in the way that they treat people. And that's not a leadership model per se. That is about, well, I guess it's a leadership model. It is what I call intentional leadership. What is your intention for having this business? Yes, we all want to make a profit. We all like a nice living. I think that's essential. You work hard, you enjoy the profits. And beyond that, what then? I think one thing for COVID for me is that, and every time something happens in Trinidad, there was a huge flood in 2018. During COVID, we always find our humanity. We return to our humanity and we donate to others who are less fortunate. People leave their homes, they go and feed the poor, they collect items, they make masks. I mean, we are fantastically creative people. And what would it be like if organizations really realize that they are leaders, absolutely leaders in this country, that they have a captive audience, and if they wanted to change this country, their leadership can change this country. And so I'll stop there, Desmond, just in terms of the time factor and for us to take any questions. I saw a question about elderly people being online, and I would say, there are a number of elderly people who are online. So yes, we know that not everybody will jump on the bandwagon. And we have to ask ourselves, what percentage of the population are the elderly people? So when we look at the stats of it, what percentage is elderly? Okay, so we know the 15% who would not get online, that is not going to change. But what about the other 85% who can get online, who could use a smartphone, who could use a tablet? What about them? So one of the things that I know in businesses is that there's the 80-20 rule. Are we going to make decisions for the 20% who are not online? Or are we going to make decisions for the 80% who are online? So that's a question for you to answer for yourself. Any other questions, Desmond?
Thank you, Maxine. I saw there was another question really. This is more a comment I'm seeing from Carola and Joseph to everyone. She said, what you said earlier, what you alluded to earlier about revisiting is quite critical. So I want to thank Carola and Joseph for that. All right, I just saw the question that you answered from Paul Saran. You know, if anybody has any more questions, you can feel free to ask your questions here orally. You know, as Maxine said, you know, one of the things we need to consider is, you know, what should we embrace moving forward and what would you leave behind in that pre-COVID-19 period? And, you know, what strategies that you're previously employing can work now and what can't and so on. So, you know, the revisiting is absolutely necessary. So again, if you have any questions at this juncture and you want to ask them orally, you can feel free to do so. And of course, while Maxine is chatting, you can post questions in the chat box as well. She will be glad to answer them. So I'm opening the floor for a couple minutes to see if anybody has a question. Paul.
Hello, good night. Thanks for inviting me to ask my question. Desmond, yes, I know Maxine had stated we would rather go towards the 80% of the persons who are inclined with technology. But do you think, as looking as a leader and as an entrepreneur on our end, we are losing the 20% that is not technically inclined? So I would like to also have a system or mechanism in place for that 20%, because it will look as though that now that we're in the COVID-19 new normal system, I would now be losing out on a 20% that I had before this pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, brilliant. So for clarification, it's not one or the other. The two can coexist. So one of the things that we as leaders need to look at in our organization is the concept of multiple realities. The reality is that 80% of us will be online, and as you said, 20% will not be. So we have to accommodate both parties going forward. And this question and this idea of multiple realities will not only be relevant for whether online or offline, it will also be relevant for other decisions that you have to make in your business. So brilliant. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
All right, I'm seeing a couple other questions. Well, they're coming in quickly now. I'm seeing one from Suran Miraj. He asked, what is the the most critical skill leaders need to navigate under these difficult and uncertain times?
Yeah, thanks, Suran. And I just want to say, hi, Suran. Suran is a friend of mine. So what I need, several things we need to navigate. We need skills to navigate at this point in time. I think, you know, the world has turned so much, and over the last 40 years, leadership has really changed a lot. It used to be command and control, I tell you what to do. And as workers have become more knowledgeable, we've moved to a more participatory type of leadership. And right now, leaders are being asked, and especially now after COVID, is to inspire people. There is a sense that we really are in positions, just as I was saying before, to change this country. And if we take that on as our responsibility to create a greater good, it means then that we're not just talking about, you know, I could do a business plan and I could make a plan happen. It means our very ethos as leaders. We really need to return to our humanity. And in that return to humanity, and recognizing that while it is that we're operating a business, we're really working with a bunch of adults doing things together, is that how about we invite people in to discuss things with us? How about when we're making decisions, we invite them in to make decisions with us and see what that is like? So to be specific, Suran, it's really about collaboration for me. And to be collaborative, then we as individuals, our patience level, our ability to listen effectively and generatively, our ability to hold a space for others to enter, where people could come and say, this is what I'm dealing with, this is how I want to deal with it. Make sure we could actually see and hear people in our presence. That's definitely it. And this is not a kumbaya thing. Let me just point that out, because when I say words like this, people usually tend to think I'm talking about a happy Pollyanna skipping thing. I would just like to share with you that I'm an accountant. So making a profit is really important to me. And I there's no excuse or no apologies for that. So even with my accounting logic, I do know logically that when I treat people well, they give me more. So there are lots of ways in which we could look at it. And as leaders, we are required to inspire people, invite them into collaboration, and invite them into participation with them. I should say with us.
Thank you, Maxine. I'm seeing a question from Caroline Joseph. She says, HR is under heavy pressure now, especially in terms of reduced compensation for staff. How can we as HR professionals or consultants better advise our clients?
Say that again for me, Desmond. It's that HR is under pressure and? Des, you're on mute.
Sorry. She said HR is under heavy pressure now, especially in terms of reduced compensation for staff. And she wants to know, how can we as HR professionals, consultants, better advise our clients?
Right. So again, I think because I'm a firm believer in dialogue and conversation, and that nobody is smarter than everybody. So this situation for consultants, I think the first thing consultants need to agree, and HR people agree, is that we don't have the answers. We may have part of the answer, but we don't have all of the answers. So for all of us engaging with the different elements of the business entity, because this is not an HR solution or IT solution, it is a business solution which requires all of the professionals from the different skills to come on board and work with them. So as a consultant, I would be totally deceitful to go into an organization and say, yeah, I've seen this before, do this, do that, do that. No, what I can do is facilitate the discussion, give people the freedom to express themselves, and together with the client, coin the way forward. I think at this point in time, if anybody tells me they have the answer and the solution, I'd be a little bit wary of that person. So I think for consultants, very much just as we ask leaders to be vulnerable and say that we don't know, so that together we could begin looking at what we know, what we don't know, what we actually have blind spots around. I think as consultants, we need to do that, because if we don't, we are going to be leading our clients down a very dark hole. So I'm glad you asked that question, because I think really and truly consultants at this point in time need to be in collaboration, because we are also taking leadership in that instant. And therefore, the very things we are asking leaders to do, we need to do it. We need to mirror that so that leaders will know how to do it.
That's an interesting segue, because even before you said that, Dexter Emirates, he made a comment, not a question, and I just want to read it because I find it's very pertinent to what it is you're saying. He said, leaders need to lead with compassion, engage in ongoing communication. Soft is now the new hard. It's a more collaborative era. Democracy and empowerment are critical, and we need to move from a hierarchy to a hierarchy. Yes. I like that. Thank you very much.
And that's exactly what I was sharing in terms of the research has shown that over the last 40 years, that the emphasis of leadership on command and control, I tell you what to do, has really shifted. And I love to use the word compassion, because very often that is what is missing in organizations. And we all know how people don't remember what we did to them, but they always remember how we make them feel. And so for leaders, the invitation is, how do you want people to feel in your presence? Because that will determine whether it is when I ask you to push a pen, whether it becomes a chore or whether it becomes a pleasure. And so, Desmond, I'd like to just segue one time into about self-leadership, because these are the words that are coming up. These are some of the ideas that are coming up. Suran's question, Dexter's contribution, in the way that we are Caribbean people, and we are very we are extremely intelligent people. And we have spent a lot of time, and I know if I were to look at the people on this call and their resumes, it'll be like thousands of years of experience, and then there'll be MBAs and BScs and masters, maybe 1 or 2 PhDs, and people who are certified right up the yazoo, you know, because that's the people we are, right? And those of us who are not trained in those ways, we have years of experience where we could give people brilliant advice and stuff like that. So we know that we are very much educated people in all forms, not just academically, right? But we have the experience. And there's a way in which, as Caribbean people, and I say Caribbean because that's the context that I know of. So I'm not saying that other people aren't, I'm just saying this is my context. I often describe us as talking heads because we're brilliant. And with our education and the way our education curriculum is devised, we don't really develop our hearts, and definitely we have not been told to bring our souls to organizations. So very much in terms of leadership and management in a lot of organizations in Trinidad, I refer to them as talking heads because we are proper, we say the right things, we are really, really educated, and we don't consider what our actions do to our souls and our hearts, and also to what it does to other people. So, and hence the reason why when Dexter mentioned the word compassion, I wanted to go straight into self-leadership, because how we treat other people is a reflection of how we treat ourselves. And where it is, I spoke about the need for us as leaders to inspire others. If we're just interested in talking heads and the logic, and my accountants, I'll talk about myself, if I deal with people only as my accountant self, which is all logic and all interested in the bottom line and looking to save expenses, guess what? I leave aside my heart and my ability to connect to people and inspire them. And I definitely leave my soul completely empty at the end of the day. And if I am not a whole person, how then do I relate to other people? I will be talking to them head to head. That means the absence of compassion. I'll be speaking to them without any interest in what is going on other than the 8 hours that they spend with me. And if it is that I have to ask them to sacrifice their family or their lives sometimes or their health, I'll easily do so, because guess what? It's all about this. So the invitation for me, for leaders, is really saying, what time are we in this entire world? And according to what you believe, if you believe in astrology, if you've been looking at changes in the world over the years, you know that we are entering into a different time. And COVID is just one of the markers or the harbingers. The things are going to be different from here on. That idea of certainty, which was really a head game, is no longer there. The things that we need to do in terms of being able to adapt, in terms of having the flexibility, those are really heart and soul questions. The days of logic and thinking that logic is the only thing that will get us through, we still need it. So back to Paul, right? The idea of the dual realities, we still need it. And it is time for us to introduce other things into our mix. Because the people who we are leading are people who are exposed to just as much information as we have as leaders. It used to be 40 years ago that not everybody could access Harvard and everywhere else and business books. Now you can Google it, right? You can download free PDFs of lots of books. So everybody has access to information. So the logic doesn't only work. How are we going to inspire people who are on our teams? And one of the reminders is that on our teams, they're adults, right? I mean, they're mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers. And how do we treat these people on a daily basis? And we know we've all worked with people like that. Unfortunately, some of us may be people like that we don't treat people like adults when they come to work with us because we pay in them, right? And yet we don't treat them like adults, but when they behave like children, we say, that is why we treat all you so. So where are we in that equation? What is our level of responsibility in that equation? And how are we inspiring? So a team of adults, so one of the things that I say, which always, people always toss up about it, you know, I always say, you know, as a leader, I don't want to care for my staff. And people usually go like, right? But it's true, because I'm not their mother. I am not their father. I'm an adult relating to another adult to achieve objectives in a particular way within a particular context or scenario. And so for me, a lot of people, a lot of business places, and I've seen organizations that say it, you know, they say, we are family, right? And the thing about it, if in a family, I always say, okay, if it's a family, so who are the adults? Who's the mother? Who's the father? And who are the kids? And guess what? Usually the employees are the kids. And so we treat them like that. And guess what? They behave like that. And I'm saying this based on evidence. I'm saying this based on experiments that I have conducted in my working career, because I wasn't always a consultant. I've been working in organizations in different scenarios, so we're not going to go into my resume here. But very often when I get a team of people, and sometimes I get teams of people who are injured, and they've been injured from working under different managers, and they are hurt. They don't believe that they have a voice because it's been beaten or buffed out of them, because some managers just take pleasure in making people feel small, right? It's true. And they come to me crippled and hurt. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of patience. You know me, I'm not really a patient person, but I have to find it if I want to find the gems in these people. And sometimes it could take 6 months, sometimes those employees do not believe that I want anything better for them. And they often do not respond because they don't trust. So it takes a long time to build trust, and trust ebbs and flows. So we have back and forths of trust being built and trust being broken. And once I stay with it and treat that person with my heart and treat that person with my soul, while still being quite clear about we have deadlines and objectives and you better meet it, right? And sending you the emails and going through the work and doing all the things that I have to do. And holding out the possibility to hear what I see something bigger in you, because you're an adult, you're a mom, you have kids home. How do you want your children to look at you? I want to look at you as the mother you want to be, and I want you to work with me. And I have seen people turn around in terms of their careers. I have worked with people and I've developed teams of people who actually a year ago did not look the way they look. And they do walk taller. They do start to put their voice into the room. They start to contribute and collaborate with you. But if we treat people, when we treat people like kids, we gotta take the kid behavior. So as leaders, the question I always ask people about their teams is, you know, who are these people working with you? You know, this is just not an admin assistant. This is somebody's mother. This is somebody's kid. This is, and somebody's kid meaning not anybody in the organization, right? Unless their mom works there. Somebody's kid. And how you treat that person will determine how that person shows up. And if that person has come to you hurt and broken, because sometimes we do have employees who are hurt and broken, you're adding to it in a particular way will also hurt them. So I'm seeing that Crystal is agreeing with Dexter. What did Dexter say, Desmond?
Dexter, let me just go back just a little bit. All right. He said leaders need to lead with compassion, engage in ongoing communication. That soft is now the new hard. It's a more collaborative era. And
so
democracy and empowerment are critical.
And
right,
I wanted to share a stat actually from the, I'm trying to remember, I think it's from the World Economic Forum that actually says 25% of business mastery comes from hard skills and 75% of business mastery comes from soft skills. And the whole idea is that, you know, it's like the old saying was, if you give a monkey a typewriter for long enough, he would type a sentence. And that's really it, because the technical skills we bring to bear, I mean, everybody could do accounting. They could go to school for however many years, they come out with a degree. Engineering, we have technicians who could probably do it in some level of engineering. Engineers go to school for 10 years, doctors do it and stuff like that. And let's not forget that the next wave is going to come, right? The next wave is going to come with artificial intelligence. It's in the US already, so there are trucks that drive themselves, and the, who is it? It was the University of Oxford, with a Japanese institution. They actually shared some stats around that, and they said by 2030, guess what? Accountants will be replaced 85%. There's an 85% probability that accountants will be replaced. High on the list with things like chemists, engineers, all the technical jobs that are hard skill jobs. And you know what jobs have like 0.1% of disappearing? Business coaches, sociologists, psychologists. So all the stuff that require the soft skills, those are the ones that would stay. And also to recognizing that it's about what I also take away from those stats are that the jobs that were left are the heart and soul jobs. The logic jobs are not going to stay around. And that's why my offer to you, I think, in terms of leadership, backed up by the research, backed up by the stats, by saying, hey, if you're still operating here, check yourself, check your business, check your teams and see how they're working in terms of what you get from them. And how about you open your heart, open your soul, whatever that means to you, and start including those in your logic. Not to leave out your logic, multiple realities. We could have more than one frame of operations at the same time working. But it's something to consider, because as the world turns and as complexity is part of our system, artificial intelligence and all the things that are coming our way, you know, everybody's talking about 5G as well, conspiracy theorists, wink, wink. As all those things come into play, we are going to see a reduction of the need for skills. I mean, even like doctors, right now they're robots doing small surgeries, right? So we know about that. So Nashrun, I see your comment. Thanks a lot, and I know you would agree with me because you're a woman like that. Nice. I think Nashrun has her hand up. Desmond, does she want to say something?
Hello, Nasrun. Would you like to ask a question? Remember, at this juncture, if you want to ask a question, you can feel free. All right. By the time you're waiting and anybody to take up that offer, let me just say, oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Good night, Maxine, and good night to everyone on this Zoom meeting. Congratulations for all the good work that you all have been doing. Maxine, to just touch on what you were saying, I totally agree. And as someone who, you know, is a coach myself on emotional intelligence, I do agree totally with the soft skills being the new wave, as you put it. So thank you again, and thanks for accepting my contribution.
Thank you, Nasrun.
And I wanted to just touch on one thing that and Desmond, anybody who wants to pop up, you could feel free, right? They could interrupt me at any point in time. And so Nasrun spoke about emotional intelligence, and I just want to say a little bit about that, because that's like a term that's been like bandied around, and I want to break it down for us on the call. Emotional intelligence is really about awareness, and to be more emotionally intelligent, step one is to be self-aware. So aware of your feelings at any point in time, you know, check in with yourself, grow your awareness of self in terms of, how do I feel this morning? I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm mad. And as you do that and you grow in your self-awareness, it becomes much easier for you to make a transition to be emotionally intelligent or emotionally aware of other people. So, so that's the synopsis of the book, right? Because in the original text, Goldman says that emotional intelligence, step one is awareness. So that's just a little tidbit there.
Thank you, Maxine.
Any other questions or comments? You're welcome, Desmond. Any other questions or comments?
All right. So remember, I'm just going to read out a few here, if we could probably address them. But in the meantime, if anybody would like to interrupt, you can feel free to do so. I saw this comment from Caroline. She said, Caroline Joseph, she says she's running a mentorship program that's motivating employees to access new skills and understand identity leadership. I think that goes well in keeping with what it is you're saying, Maxine. I saw a question here from Carla Mendez. She says, what are the checks and balances in place for online fraud scamming, and who will be protecting customers online from these activities, and how will customers know who to trust online?
Right. So one thing I'm sure about is that I know about leadership and I know little about IT. So Carla, great question, but I'm not ashamed to say I don't know that's outside of my technical expertise. But I think, Desmond, you could hold on to it, and if anybody in the audience knows about it, they can feel free to answer.
All right. In the meantime, though, Let me see. I'm seeing one comment from Keisha Cruikshank. She said, good evening. The workforce in the country has proven via this pandemic that acceptance of digital strategies and working from home is marginal. She said this is noted on two levels, that there's a fear that non-essential jobs will become redundant if more functions become digitized. And two, we are not pushing the limits on finding creative ways to work from home. We are still demanding to go back to the physical workspace. How can leaders, how can leaders effect the appropriate change management needed?
Yeah, so I'm
appropriate
really
change
glad that
management.
that question came up for two reasons. One, working from home with children there, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people and that's not possible, right? It's difficult. Daycares are closed and schools are closed. So one of the things that I know is that the evidence that we're collecting and the data we're collecting around the work from home experience is skewed because it is with everybody home. And everybody in this case is, if you have kids, if you have one child, if you have a toddler, it's not going to happen. Two, in the other piece of data which is missing from that statement is the fact that a lot of companies did not equip their workers with the resources, whether laptop or PC or whatever, to work from home adequately. So there was that mad scramble, as well as not only the equipment, but also to access to the database where they could do real work. So for me, the work from home scenario was not a good prototype, because the conditions that existed were not, I don't want to say ideal, but they weren't real. So for me to make a definitive statement on work from home in terms of the mechanisms of it, I would say when kids go out to school, let's see what happens. When organizations equip people with their VPNs and their resources in terms of their PCs and laptops that actually are working to proper speeds, then we can have the discussion because we'll have the data. I do want to say one of the other things that made it really difficult for people to work from home is because management, leaders, business owners have not made a distinction between remote working and working from home. Or I should say remote working and availability. There's an assumption and an innate assumption that because you're home, you are available. And I'm not talking about the fact that you're in the kitchen or that you're making dinner or anything like that. It's just as in people have been micromanaging people at the offices who are working remotely. They have been having unscheduled calls to check up on them. They have been having meetings. Every 5 minutes, they call in a meeting. So people who are working from home have been saying, I am not getting an opportunity to work, or my days are longer because during the day I am inundated with ridiculous requests. And therefore the question for me, back to what we're talking to the soft skills discussion, is where's the trust? What are you saying about the people you hire, the people you pay every month, the people who you keep employed, that they're home for 6 weeks and you don't think that they could work, so you're on their backs every time. So you know, there is a dichotomy there for me. And I always wonder about it in terms of people and employment and stuff. Why hire people who you don't trust? And in this pandemic situation, I think it became even more glaring when people had to go home, that the trust factor was not there because people were just being inundated by calls. So thanks for that, and I'm glad you mentioned that. But I think the conditions do not exist for us to make a good call yet on whether working from home is effective. If you take away the trust factor, all the logic that I was talking about before, I think those things need to be in place first, and then we can have some real data about if it's effective or not.
Maxine, I have to admit the questions are coming in a lot now. I am quite encouraged by the response. There's a question from Alicia Haynes. I'm not sure you might be able to answer it. Let's see. How do teachers adapt their curriculum to better prepare students for this post-COVID period?
Well, you know, so I will answer it this way. I think in terms of teachers, the question for teachers is, what adult are you producing for us to have in the workplace? And the adaptations around I don't think the Ministry of Education will agree with me, because we still are producing talking heads. So for me, the invitation is, how are we going to digitize schools? How are we going to teach our children to be online and the skills that they need to be in this world? One of the things for me, my pet peeve is, why aren't books on PDFs? why are children still toting bags when they have smartphones at home? Yes, I know there'll be a 15% who doesn't have, but I'm saying in general, why is this we don't even have a move to that way, so you could have a PDF or a book? And then the last part about, well, you know, we know that the token head thing, that should be on our way out. So while it is we emphasize education in terms of academics, what about the other types of intelligence and how we develop in that? So there's spatial intelligence, there's music intelligence, there's creativity, need for us to be creative, innovative, how are we teaching that in schools? So those are the things that I would like to see adapted in terms of the school curriculum. Bring some heart and soul in it, teach our children how to work in teams, how to collaborate, the skills that they actually need going forward.
Thank you, Maxine. Seeing something here from Jonathan Bihari. He said leadership in the local context is deficient in emotional intelligence, particularly in these unprecedented times where it's needed, which is something you alluded to earlier. Yes. Rebecca Coburn, flexibility and agility are also required of leaders, especially in this environment. So again, pretty much supporting what it is you're seeing. I'm seeing one from Dexter Emmerich to everyone. I agree, Maxine. We have to be like, I'm not sure I should mention the name, but we have to be like Tattle, treat people like people with love, humility, respect while holding them accountable. Plug. And,
we got plug.
Keisha Cruikshank said, well said, to ask a parent to leave their kids behind to perform on the job is tough. I'm looking for questions. All right, okay, here's another one. Alison P asks, how are we going to reassure parents who are employees that they won't be further sidelined or disadvantaged from learning the new procedures and processes if they're encouraged to stay at home and tend to their children while schools are closed? That's a very valid question.
It's a valid question. And you know what? I'm going to be a little provocative and say, you know what? That maybe men now will understand what women sacrifice when they have pregnancies and they want to be ahead in their career. You know, I think as women, we know that 3 months of maternity leave, and God forbid if you're sick, and that first year when it's touch and go with your kids, we know that there is a sacrifice that we make for family. And the sacrifice is usually around career and advancement, special projects. You know, we kind of have to slip back in and find our place. And I would say that if you look around, there are women who have done it, you know, and I think they would be able to say how they did it, not me. And that's one. And then the second thing that I want to allude to, and I just want to say hats off to all those fantastic women. I mean, you know who you are, and I've seen some of your names pop up on the screen. I want to just address processes a little bit. That's one of my pets, because processes in organizations in terms of how you deposit money in the bank, how you take an order and convert it into a delivery for a client. Processes for me are like the DNA of an organization. But I'm also too a quality manager, and my first book is around processes. So when I go into an organization, I see the way a process works, I could tell you the culture of that organization. And some of the questions I'd put forward for you would be, what are your assumptions about the people who work with you? So for instance, if your assumption is that they will thief from you or they're dishonest, you're going to have endless checks and balances in your process, right? I'm not saying don't have checks and balances. I'm saying that I'm saying there's a correlation between the trust you have for people and the amount of inspection you build into a process. So that's one. That's very clear around that. Also too, in terms about the beliefs about who in the organization are stars, the processes also lead you that way. So you would go into an office, you would see some people they're excited about their job and they stay later than everybody, they work harder than everybody, they need to check everybody's work, because the assumption is that there's this one star employee and the others are not really as good as they are. So that's the dichotomy between the processes. And so I think a number of people have told me working from home has really proven to them that some of their processes are archaic, some of them are redundant, some of them have too much inspection in it. Because the beauty of COVID is that we all had to flex and adapt. So if it is you wanted something needed 10 people involved, we realized that one person could actually do it. What do we do with the other 9? No, we don't have to send them home. We redeploy them to where it is that we need them. And there are places in the organization people have also seen where we're lacking competencies. Any other questions, Desmond?
Well, Maxine, actually, there are plenty. So what I'll do, I'll actually read a few more comments and questions, just about 5 more quickly, and then I know you'll get into the other part, and then we could always address the rest of the questions afterwards. All right? So,
yes.
Himraj,
But I've been moving. Actually, let's do the questions because I've been moving back and forth between the various parts. So
okay, cool.
We could do questions. Yeah.
All right, I'm trying to decipher which are questions and comments, but there's a lot. So let me get you to Himraji. Himraji made a comment. She said this is a very dynamic time which requires leaders to be creative and flexible in order to survive and achieve their established targets. I want to remind people as well, feel free to interrupt me. If you want to ask a question, you just come on and ask a question. I'm going to give you the leeway to do so. All right?
Yeah, I think I want to encourage that, Desmond, that people put their voices into the room. Yeah. This is us collaborating and co-creating this together, and this is what it looks like. So don't be afraid to be seen or heard.
Of course. Alison P. says she agrees with Maxine. Soft skills sometimes takes a back burner to getting a job done. Melissa, this is Akila. She said, totally agree. Investing your time to develop soft skills now benefit in the long run. I have one here from Donna Louisa Eversley. Business owners need to stop using family as a convenient word to demand loyalty and acceptance, but treat with respect, kindness, appreciation for the role. Totally right about leading with heart and soul. Of course, that's alluding to Maxine's initial preamble about maybe the way to move forward for leadership in the Caribbean context is to bring your hearts and souls to the organizations instead of just your logical self alone. So that pretty much alludes to what Maxine was saying there earlier. Dexter says AI will become more prevalent and hence soft skills will become even more critical. Nothing beats the human touch, and hence EI and spiritual intelligence will be the leaders in the competitive age. A lovely comment here from Judy Joseph McSween. She said hard skills are soft, they change all the time, are constantly being obsoleted, and are relatively easy to learn. And soft skills are hard. They are difficult to build. Critical and take extreme effort to obtain soft skills equals power tools, equal fully intelligent leaders, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual intelligence. Love that comment, Judy. Keisha Cruikshank, a new paradigm shift is emerging where leaders must now prepare their businesses to shift from a culture of globalization. This also resulted leaders in leaders finding ways to bridge trust issues. Once again, I want to remind you, like a lot of these comments are a bit long. So if you feel, you can feel free to, as Maxine said, enter the conversation.
Yes.
You can make these comments yourselves and you can ask
Have you seen any questions?
Yeah, well, I'm going to just now. There's so many.
Okay, so
many things that I see more. Okay, I have one here.
Okay.
From Jonathan B. Harry. How should leaders motivate, encourage, and inspire employees during this time of uncertainty where so much is unknown, which they have no control over? That's a relevant question.
Great question. So am I on? Yeah, so that's back to my point about vulnerability when the question was asked about consultants and HR people. It used to be that leaders knew everything. It's our business. We create this business. It's ours. We know everything about it because, you probably do. And you would have invested a lot of time, a lot of resources, and be very passionate about it. And we want to keep it afloat. And I think the time of COVID and going forward, we also realize that there are lots of things that we don't know. And so our ego tells us, pretend that you know, just baffle them at BS, fake it until you make it. And the reality is that the more that we do that as leaders, the more exposed that we become, which is quite different from saying at this point in time, guys, I don't know what is going on here, but we're gonna have a conversation about it because together we'll figure it out. That immediately puts people sort of like, if they were defensive, they drop their defensive because you've dropped yours. And so in that space, you begin to enter into conversation, which ends up being inspirational to the other people because they're saying, wow, if Maxine could come with all that she knows and say she doesn't know, and she want to hear from me, well, then I will show up for Maxine. Another way that I find in terms of inspiring and motivating people is really understanding who that person is. And that who is not their resume. That who is about what is that person interested in, what makes that person tick, what they want for themselves and their family, and very clearly making that link between what you ask them to do on a daily basis with whatever it is their dream is. So you want to go vacation to Rome next year? Well, then here what? How about let's see what kind of bonus you could work for. But to get that bonus, you need to achieve these objectives. If it is that person really see and really believe that you're not gonna shaft them at the end of it, they're gonna work because their goal is to get to Rome, and you're going to help them 50% of the way. So understanding what motivates people, just as you know what motivates yourself. If you understand what motivates people, you have to do so by having conversations, right? And conversations where it is that people trust that you're really interested in hearing about them. You know, my daughter's wedding coming up, I want to save my vacation for that. So, okay, fine. So if you want to save your vacation, maybe we could get some extra days. How about instead of paying you overtime, you take some extra days off? But one hand don't clap, right? So yeah. So what do people want? What's in it for them if they do this? How can we help them achieve what they want to achieve through the vehicle which we have? And the vehicle we have is work, right? Work that you will get paid for, work that is incentivized, work that you need to achieve your objectives if you want incentives. But very, very logical. But again, adding the logic that we have already and creating the avenues for heart and soul to enter. Any other questions, guys?
Any other questions? I'm not seeing any questions in the chats. Lots of comments. I want to invite people again at this juncture before Maxine moves on. I'm going to give you a few seconds. If you have any questions you want to ask, perhaps even those who would have made those comments in the chats. Some of them are very nice comments, and I think everybody should hear them. So if you feel you'd like to make them orally, you can do so now. I'm going to allow a few seconds, and then Maxine will proceed into the final part of her presentation.
There's Keisha has a hand up.
Yes, Keisha, go ahead.
Keisha, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Sorry about that. Hi, good night.
Hi.
Lovely discussion. My question concerns, given the fact that we are now entering economic constraints, how would leaders today manage the needs of the organization versus the needs of the individual employees?
But so Keisha, thanks for that question. And the assumption in that question is that they are two opposing ends. You know, so so in my way of thinking, for us in this economic recovery, we need staff. We might need as many as we have. We probably can't afford as many as we had or to pay them the same way. And also too, staff needs us for their own economic recovery. So I'm not seeing a dichotomy between the two, because actually it is a symbiotic process. So what's good for the business is good for staff, and what's good for staff is good for the business. Of course, it could be, and of course it comes down to the individual and what their intention is with their leadership. Because some people might interpret what I'm saying as, oh, I have staff right by the short and curly. I could do what I want because they have to take it because everybody have economic hardship. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about let us together build together because we both need each other. So if it is that and I mean in this market it will probably be a buyer's market. So employers have the upper hand because a lot of people would have lost jobs and they're looking that the economic recovery will impact individuals. And if it is that business owners take these stance and say, well, you have to, you must, well, then we will not go any way forward. And one of the first things I spoke about when I started the call was that all our businesses, these small organizations, medium enterprises, mom and pop shops, that we more than anybody else, because we employ people, we have a responsibility, or I shouldn't say responsibility, we can actually imagine that we can create a greater good for this country by the way we treat people, and by the way that we lead people. I think Mr. Pinard has a question. At least Beckles is saying that she loves that question, and Anna's hand is up. So can we do Anna and then find Mr. Pinard's question? Okay.
Anna Jacob, you can go ahead. You could just unmute your mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Good night, everybody. I just want to, with regard to Lisa's comment about the unusual hours and things like that, I actually experienced an issue when this COVID first started. where they insisted that people join the WhatsApp group using their personal phone. I chose not to. I had gotten to the point where the supervisor wanted to give me a letter of insubordination. They checked with ECA, which said they can't force me to do it. And now we have employees who are complaining that they're getting calls on the weekend, calls 7 o'clock at 9:30 at night. So if we're streamlining teleworking, then as Lisa was saying about there will need to be a new protocol concerning that, because clearly it is going to be an issue. I have a problem, people in my personal space, because Maxine spoke about, at some point she was talking about, like, they didn't know where to draw, people don't know where to draw the line.
Yes.
There isn't that sensitivity, and it could be very irritating for an employee. So I want to know if you see something like that developing in the future, seeing that obviously teleworking is going to become a way of life now.
Yeah. So Anna, definitely, and I think that I think everybody could share the experiences that you have spoken about. I spoke about the fact that people were using their own personal laptops and stuff because they weren't resourced. I have people who were doing accounts payable and they were using PDF documents. They couldn't access the company's data system. So you're absolutely right. And therefore, if it is we want to reap the benefits as businesses, we need to make some decisions around it, and there needs to be some protocols around how we work from home. And the thing about it is that this is not a new invention, right? Anybody who wants to know how to work from home, Google best practices for work from home. There are companies that have been doing it for years. I worked at Aeon Caribbean, and some of our Aeon people have never met each other because they work from home all the time. So it's not new. And we know that the pandemic happened and people didn't plan for it. And that's why I asked the question at the beginning. When you look back at your 6 weeks, what are you carrying forward, what you want to leave behind, what you want to do differently? Because working from home is a great solution. If I had a business and I had branches, I would close some of the branches. I would make some staff work from home, have them come in the office twice a week, then 3 times the next week. Because it's just going to save me money, right? Tea, coffee, uniforms, you name it, right? Rent, I could cut my building in half. So there are practical applications and practical benefits from a head point of view about working from home. And businesses, again, the compassion that was spoken about before, operating from heart and soul because you want blood from these people, how it is that we can overstep our boundaries because we don't think that we're dealing with adults. We think that people are in a position where they have to. And therefore, as children will do, we make demands of children. I don't believe in that either, but we make demands of children. And if it is that we're not building adult-to-adult relationships, we think we could tell people, we could threaten them, we could cajole because we're the adults and they're the kids. So, and I just want to say, I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. I'm with you in this moment, just knowing that was not a nice experience.
No, but actually I can handle my stories, so
I'm sure you can.
Trust me, I can handle my stories.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that I can't reach out to you and be with you in the moment because whether you can handle it or not, it does affect you.
Yeah, but one of the things too, he insisted that I use my personal laptop or other people got embassy, laptops. They got laptops and because I didn't want to join the WhatsApp group. So the other option was to go to work. So I just went to work and it was no problem. Yeah. I was trying to get out of the house.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for your contributions.
Yeah.
Desmond, any more questions or anybody else wants to put up their hand? Okay.
Mr. Gerard Pinard, I think you had a question. I have not seen the question on the chat, but I'm seeing everybody referring to it. So obviously it's a good question. So please go ahead, Mr. Gerard Pinard, if you're there.
Yeah, I did ask the question as well. What I was making the point that sometimes we think that we can incentivize or motivate people more than we actually can. That even raises questions about manipulation and so sometimes. But I think what you do is you provide opportunities for people who are prepared to be engaged in something that they consider worthwhile. And the question that I had appended to it was, how do we make sure that we select the right people and how do we weed out the wrong people? Because we must. Not everyone is going to want to be part of what we want to do or what we need to do as an organization. And I know it's a controversial position to put forward, but I think it's the reality. There's only so much that you can do to quote unquote motivate people, because the motivation has to come from within.
I completely agree with you, and I think this is where I have a little bit of divorce from this. This is where my logic kicks in. I would say this is where my accountant kicks in. What I've seen in organizations a lot of times is that people enter the organization, they're put on probation, they fail probation, and they're not sent home, right? That's why we have probation, 3 months or 6 months. That's why you can extend probation legally, right? Not to fall foul of IR. So, and very often people hire people, they see that they can't perform and they keep them on. So my first question will be why? People miss, and so the organization has objectives, you have deadlines. The procedure for getting rid of employees is often not followed. Even if you're unionized, the conversations with the unions are not happening, because again, there's a tendency not to have adult relationships. So Desmond is my boss, and Desmond says, oh, you know, Maxine had problems at home, so therefore Maxine can't function. Okay, that's 1 month. Next month, Maxine has problems at home. So the questions that Desmond needs to ask me is, Maxine, what's going on? Do you need intervention? Do you need to take your holidays? Because you have things that will allow you to do so. But a lot of times in organizations, because we think of employees as handicapped and we think of them as not quite complete adults, we treat them with baby gloves. And I mean, and that does not really support anybody. So to answer your question, I think that when we have, and I've had employees as well who have helped move on from the organization because they were no longer motivated, but I knew what their motivation was. So when one of my young employees came to me and said his wife was pregnant, I said to him, do you really think you should stay in this job? Because you will need to do some extra things. He said, you know what, he looked around, he found a job which was a contract job for 2 years, and he took that job because he knew what he needed at a point in time. And I think a lot of times we have to be strategic. Yeah, don't think for a minute with the heart and soul talk that I'm not strategic and I'm not logical. I'm an accountant as well. And sometimes we have to help people usher them out. And a lot of times, yes, I agree with you, Caroline, that they don't give, yes, because a lot of times we as leaders, we fail to follow the protocol in the organization for what is for disciplinary action, for recording of grievances. We don't do it. So we leave. And also too, the other thing is that we create stars. We love to have bright people on the team. And what we do with bright people is that we make them brighter, because we give them special projects, we give them all the juicy, sexy things to do. And the people who are less smart, we give them just little jobs to do. So guess what? We set up a scenario where our stars and bright people who we train up, we give them special projects, we always calling on them, they stay and they work late, they become poached by other organizations. And guess who's left behind? All the people who we never give a special project to. So we need to look at our management skills as well. We need to look at how it is that we actually motivate people. And we need to look at how we actually follow the disciplinary protocols of the organization. And sometimes you just have to help people move on, because sometimes their interest is not there. And if it is within their retirement and they're not working, some of them just need to be offered a package. But we don't get to there because we don't think that they're adults and we want to hold hands and we want to take care of them. These are adults. They need to take care of themselves, and we need to have compassion for them and do what is necessary along the prescriptions within the organization. And Tusha has a hand up.
All right, thank you, Maxine. And Tosha, yeah, and Tosha Kadaru, could you yeah, and Tosha Kadaru, could you
Yeah.
your floor is yours, as it were.
Yeah, thank you. Good night, everyone. Well, the conversation seems to be drawing a lot on the human resource aspect, but for some of us who have smaller businesses, The question has arisen among myself and colleagues, when is a good time to increase prices? Because now that you have a large proportion of the population, at home, some people with reduced incomes and all of that, when is a good time to adjust prices for services, goods and services?
Well, Tisha, that's a great question. And I would ask you this question. In light of what is going on, do you think it's a good time to increase prices?
What I had told several of my colleagues is that, we need to treat lightly with that.
Yes.
Allow people to kind of catch themselves, allow the economy to start to move again. And I am telling some of them, let's wait until 2021. Let us just kind of ride the tide, because there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't even know if we'll be affected by a second wave, which is a reality when borders reopen and all of that. And from my angle, a lot of people may not agree with me, but I think, ride the tide a bit. Let's wait, until perhaps the end of the year. Yeah.
And Anushka, thanks for that. And the reality is that there's a reduced amount of disposable income right now in the economy of the country. Some people have gotten 30% cuts in salaries, and these are people at managerial level. Some people have gotten, some people are sent home. Some people are just being home and not being paid, with the hope that when things come back up, they'll get back to work. There are plants in Point Lisa's estate that have shut down. So raising your prices for who to buy what? Because if it is that we could look at the goods and services we offer, and if they're not essential, for the last 6 weeks, people have been spending money on utilities and food. So if it is not essential, raising prices for whom to buy, that would be an interesting question. So thanks for your contribution, and that is a real thing.
Thank you, Maxine. Maxine, I think at this point, I think you had another part of the presentation you'd like to discuss, because I'm not seeing any questions per se, unless I'm just seeing a lot of good comments. So again, I'm just going to remind people, if while Maxine is speaking, you want to say something, feel free to do so. The floor would be yours. And at this juncture, I'd allow Maxine to just proceed with what it is she wanted to continue with.
So thanks a lot, Desmond. So in terms of this entire conversation that we've been having, the idea of nation building seems a little archaic, right? What is a nation? What are we building? And still, I want us as business people, whether it's a parlor, whether you have 1 employee, whether you have 10 employees, to consider that in this nation, according to who you believe, we have less than 10% unemployment. That means 90% of us are employed in some form of fashion, whether it's part-time, whether it's 100% employed, in some sort of business or organization. And I'm just saying that business owners, whether it's a grocery, whether it's a consultancy, whether it's a manufacturing enterprise, that we have a captive audience for at least 20 to 40 hours a week. And most of us have them for more than 40 hours. And if we were to think about our leadership in terms of creating something better, what would we do differently? Because this thing about leadership we're not talking about management, we're not talking about supervision. We're talking about a privilege that we have to impact upon people. And how we exercise this privilege is because they are at our disposal for X amount of time, and sometimes more, per week. And in this way, we are influencers. The things that we want to create, we could actually create our own realities with these people who work with us, for the people who we provide services to. And this is a real powerful position that we have. Yes, okay, fine. We make the money, we drive the cars, we have a nice home, we take care of our children, we take care of ourselves. And beyond that, what is your legacy? Buildings will crumble. People will pass on. And what is your legacy and what is your contribution? So I would say that I don't believe in government per se, right? Because I remember when we didn't have a government in this country because, you know, the political thing was tied. And businesses ran, and people went to work, and people got married, people died. Yes, a lot of us may be involved in the public sector. And even in the public sector, the government, in terms of the politics of it, is not really who's running those enterprises. So those of us who have teams, those of us who have an employee of one, my question to you is, what are you creating with your leadership? What is the unique opportunity that you have to harness the intelligence and creativity of the people that you work with, to make an impact in the way that they live, because you pay them, make an impact on how they return from your job every day to their family, because you do impact them? What are you creating? So when we stand and we say, this country gone to the dogs, boy, yeah, how you treat people in your organization. When we stand and say there's so much road rage, is it your employee who left you vexed and now taken out, expressing themselves on the highway? When it is that we know people are in abusive relationships within their homes, what are we doing as organizations? Or we turn a blind eye? You know, what are we doing? And my suggestion is that if we want to see a better society, we can't wait. We can't wait on the politicians. They have a separate agenda. If we want to see something better in this country, we have the ability to create magic right from the places that we employ people, right from the businesses that we are running, right from the parlor, because it could be a parlor, right? But there's so many people who walk through our doors every day, and we could choose to be a light for those people. And so I think that leadership is about, it is a privilege. If we express ourselves as managers, maybe we're not accessing all of the privilege that we have. And leadership is about us taking and leading people on a journey in terms of really being able to create something new, something that is beyond what their expectations are. And we all remember that person who inspired us as a kid, as a young adult, who showed us something that was a little bit beyond ourselves and what our experience was. And what if we could be that for every person who's with us, every person who's working with us, every person who we are managing, and even the people who sit in next to us, because they mightn't have a title, but hey, you could make a decision to take leadership in its truest context in all of these spheres that you enter. And that's more or less, that's my presentation. So if there are any more questions or comments, I'll stay on and take those. And thank you, all of you.
Of course. All right, so I'm going to open the floor a little bit for questions and even comments. Please feel free. I'm reading some of these comments, of course, and you know, much of it people are offering, you know, similar sort of narratives, sharing some perspectives, and I think those things will be better said by the individuals themselves instead of me reading them. I think you do much more justice to it than I would. So, but I'm not seeing any. I'm seeing one from Jonathan Bihari. He's asking, what are some of the opportunities for leaders to positive? Oh no, this was done already, wasn't it? Let me just read it. I'm seeing this. What are some of the opportunities for leaders to positively impact employees during this time? We've been told that there are opportunities even in the pandemic, if we are open to seeing them. Okay, it's a similar question to some I went before, but it's not the same. So you want me to read it again for you, Maxine? It's from Jonathan.
Yes, please, Desmond. That'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the opportunities for leaders to positively impact employees during this time? We've been told there are opportunities even in this pandemic if we're open to seeing them.
Yeah, great question. For me, Jonathan, the thing about it is that one of the things I'm pretty sure about is that the past is the past. And therefore, the opportunities for us is to really just imagine that it's almost as if we're on ground zero for all our businesses. So the opportunity that I see and that I'm pretty excited about is that whatever we did 6 weeks ago, that's irrelevant. Whatever it is we plan to do now, we can roll it out almost like a magic carpet and say, this is the way we're going forward. So the opportunity the biggest opportunity I see for leaders is that whatever version of yourself was 6 weeks ago, you can reboot your leadership. You can say, you know what, going forward, this is the type of leader that I want to be. And humans don't really have that great memories, right? That's why performance management is often skewed because of recency, right? Whatever happened, that's what we go with. And for me, the opportunity for leaders is, how do I want to be as a leader? And start from the next time you enter into the office to be that leader. Because whatever happened before COVID really doesn't matter. So if it is that you want to say that your company is a state-of-the-art company and you want to invest in the technology, nobody's going to remember that 6 weeks ago it wasn't. So for me, the opportunity is, as I was saying, this blank canvas. And on this canvas, you can create the future that you want to. Most of us don't believe that, but the reality is that we can. Yeah. And then also too, we have this concept of emergence. And that's what COVID was, right? It wasn't anything planned. It was something that appeared in our environment. It was not created by anything that we did. So nobody did anything wrong, right? Nobody messed up. And yet we were hit full in the face with this COVID-19, and we had to change everything. And that is the opportunity. The opportunity is that we didn't crash because we did something wrong. So therefore, we are not recovering. We are creating a new way forward. It's not a play on words. I'm not trying to be smart. The reality is that we can launch into any direction we want now. So for instance, Angostura creating hand sanitizers. That's a launch. We know that they're a rum company, but here what? In the middle of this, the opportunity they took is to create this thing which was needed on the market and which was not being imported at that point in time. People making masks. That's a great example of another opportunity. Some people didn't know how to make a mask 6 weeks ago. Now they know how to. They can do it fancy and fancy and fancy up, right? So that's the whole point about when I say that this is new, a blank canvas, because the opportunity is there for you to create your world and for you to change your paradigms.
Okay, I saw that Donna Louisa Eversley had her hand up.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing her anymore. I think she's bumped off. Donna Louisa Eversley, are you there? You can feel free to ask your question.
Hi, good night, everyone. Maxine and Desmond. Yeah, this has been fantastic, super delicious. I really appreciate everyone and all the comments, but I just wanted to throw out something there to everyone. But managing expectations right now with staff and with people on the whole, it seems to me that it is a bit vague and it is not given the level of consideration that is required in terms of the human aspect of it. I know there is quite a bit of uncertainty with the small and the medium businesses in particular because of their corporate structure. And so therefore, because of their own anxieties, putting more, I don't want to use the word positive, but putting some sort of direct, immediate communication that addresses expectations is something that is not, I'm not seeing. Mm-hmm. And I do believe, because I've spoken to a number of employees in many different companies, and I think the underlying thing that seems to be creeping up is, will we go back to how it used to be? And if not, what comes next? Obviously, in terms of leadership, what we should be addressing, it doesn't matter the competency level, but we need to assure people that here's what, there is going to be a tomorrow. So therefore, when you started off speaking about the heart and the soul of leadership, and because leading with heart is really this quote unquote local thing about all of we is family. Are we really family? Because if I am your family, I want you to be straight with me. I want you to tell me that here's what. I would like you to tell me that, hey, right now, I really don't know what is going on, but I intend to find a way to navigate through this. I will update you. We will keep talking. We will keep communicating, because I know I need to manage your expectations because I am your senior. I am the person that is responsible for your income. So I think that managing expectations, we need to be a little more sensitive to the fact that everybody's on a different level and not everybody understands the same way. So that I think some sort of message needs to go out there, some series of messages in terms of expectations, what comes next, that sort of thing. We need to address that because this is where the mental health and the stress issues will be played out in the upcoming months and that sort of thing. So this is my little contribution. I would like to hear something on it in terms of any ideas or how do we move forward.
Thank you, Donna. So the two words that played in my mind as you were speaking was the word optimism and the other one, that communication. So I'll deal with optimism first. And optimism is not a Pollyanna thing. Optimism is a real contribution that leaders can make in terms of exactly what you said. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, and there will be a tomorrow. Holding out that sense that we don't know what is happening, and we will figure it out together. I think two things that stop people from being optimistic would be, of course, we all have the anxieties. It's a shared thing. Not being able to divorce ourselves from the anxiety, and also not being to be able to express how we feel. Because very often just expressing how we feel helps to relieve some of that pressure. So the other thing is communication. There was one company that I saw at the beginning of the pandemic. They were very, very in constant communication with their employees. You know, it's almost like how the CMO and the Minister of Health, they were given constant information. And that sense of that constant communication, that really helps people put people at ease. Even saying, I don't know, means that people will know, you don't know, so I can't ask you the question again. Or they could say, oh, it's okay not to know because Maxine doesn't know. So I think, again, back to our old model of leadership, where it is the leader knew everything and the leader was at the top of the food chain. That sometimes prevents leaders from saying, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I need help from you. What do you think we could do to have those kind of conversations? Because more now than ever before, we need to have conversations with our staff. Coronavirus keeps morphing. Every week is like there's something new. So how can you as a leader know what is happening tomorrow? You don't. So what would it be like if it is that we invited people in to say, I don't know, do you know? What do I know? I know X, Y, and Z. What do you know? I know X, Y, and Z. I'm thinking about this. I'm wondering if it is, because nobody is smarter than everybody. And I think one of the things that leaders can actually do is really give themselves permission to say that they don't know, and give themselves permission. And this is where the emotional intelligence of the self-awareness that I spoke about earlier comes in, to know that it's okay not to know. It is okay to say, I need help. Because you spoke about the mental health, that false expectation leads us down the rabbit hole of suffering from the mental health, because the pressure we put on ourselves to say, I must know everything, I have to lead my team this way, and we don't know, and we're failing. We think we're failing because we don't know, and it's perfectly logical that nobody would know everything. So thanks for that contribution, Donna.
I think Paul Saran wanted to say something. Paul, this is the opportunity. Paul Saran.
Yes, good night again. Thank you, Maxine, and your team for giving us this productive and informative webinar. My last question, though, is that I'm an entrepreneur. I basically do the visa application process and that kind of thing. And since from March, when the COVID-19 came into our country, I was directly affected. It's not like a few weeks after when most entrepreneurs or companies get affected. I was directly affected one time. So I have lost a lot of earnings and income, but I don't want to make it too political, but we continue to hear the politician talks a lot, but they're not walking the walk in terms of building back small businesses and entrepreneurs. In that aspect, I mean, giving back to the small businessmen and the entrepreneurs who have lost a lot of earnings, and it's not going to recover right now, even though we will be lifted eventually from this pandemic. We're looking forward to post-COVID-19, our business who were directly affected in terms of tourism, airline, and that kind of thing that fall under my establishment. We would still continue to be affected for a very long time because people were scared to travel unless it's a business emergency reason. And that is when business is totally shut down. I would do one or two plans, but it's not like how it impacted before. And my question is, who is going to assist us as small business and entrepreneurs? Thank you.
That's a great question. And the reality is, so I'm going to put on my accountant's hat here. The reality is that there's a risk and reward factor for any business that we take on. And I'm not entering into political agenda. When I speak about leadership, I'm not talking about politics. That's a whole different realm from what I am and what I can do. So again, I have no shame in saying what I can and cannot do, right? So that's fine. So there's a risk and reward for everything that we do. When I leave, so I am like you, just offering services, not products. The fact is, some of us, our services will no longer be required in 2020. That's a fact. If you are a hype man for parties, chances are you probably won't get hired until October. You're not going to have a fantastic summer where it is that we make money. And you were speaking about that entire airline industry, the borders are closed, etc., etc. When the times are great, we as business people have great times. And when the times are lean, we as business people have lean times. That's what I was alluding to in terms of the risk reward factor. So the questions that I would ask if I were your coach, what other skills do you have that you can tap into? What else can you do with your existing skills to generate income for yourself? And who can help you at this point in time? And when I say who, I don't think the government is an answer. I spoke about that before when I spoke about us not having a government per se, and my personal beliefs about when we want to lead this thing, it's not about a political agenda. It really is about us as individuals taking up the harnessing and creativity and running with it because we are people of influence. So I really want to sympathize with you because you, all event planners, all people in the tourism industry, yes, you all are suffering. And then the question would be, the skills that you have, they can be applied in other scenarios. And I will just go back to the example I used. Who knew that Angostura could have produced hand sanitizers? So there's an opportunity for you to look at the skills that you have and see where else you could put them, because I believe that once you do the examination, you'd find yourself fitting into places that you probably didn't think that you would fit into before. And we know it's going to come back, as you alluded to, it's probably take a little while. So my sympathies, I know it's rough. It's rough for all of us who are self-employed at this point in time.
Thank you, Maxine. I'm seeing a question from Anthony Durant. Do you see this uncertainty as an opportunity for small and medium enterprises to become disruptors?
I think every day, I think the beauty about small and medium enterprises is that we could literally turn on a dime, right? We're not the behemoths that when a decision is made in the boardroom, it has to penetrate many layers of management and to reach the person at the front line. We could make decisions flexible, adaptable, that's us. So I think the opportunity has always been there for us to be the disruptors. Now in this space, I think if you want to be a ballerina, you could be one, because the space is open. So therefore, whatever you want to disrupt in any way, I think, yes, I absolutely agree with you.
All right, I have another question from Jonathan Bihari. Is leadership equipped to competently manage the mental health aspect of this pandemic? For many reasons, this is a highly sensitive time for employees.
Yeah. I don't think leadership is equipped to handle that, because mental health, there are mental health professions, right? And what we can do is we spoke about compassion before, we spoke about heart and soul, and we spoke about creating particular environments that people could thrive within. And most important, I think, for leaders right now in terms of mental health is to check on your own mental health. So, you know, in the airplanes, before you put the gas mask on somebody, oxygen mask on somebody else, you kind of put it on yours first. So before we worry about the mental health of employees, and yes, we should be concerned about it. And we need to, before we go check in on other people, check on ourselves and see how's our mental health. see what it is that we are mirroring to the people who look up to us, because they do look up to you. Whether or not you think they don't, they do. They look up to you because you have achieved certain things, you've started a business, all sorts of stuff. And check on ourselves and make sure that our mental health is in such a state that we can actually begin to deal with other people and ask them those questions. But definitely make sure your oxygen mask is on first before checking on the masks of others.
All right, thank you very much, Maxine. Are there any other questions anybody like to ask at this moment, or even make a comment? I'm just going to leave it open for a few seconds before to give you the jump off. Or Rebecca Coburn, I'm seeing.
Rebecca.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Managing Director of RMC Language Consultancy, my own company. And you mentioned a lot of things that resonated with me, Maxine. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
The Chambers and to Desmond for this forum. And I basically wanted to say that sometimes as business owners, we resist change. You know, we might get accustomed to the services that we are comfortable with. And it may not be that we can't change or offer something new. We may just have to think about how we can offer it. And the case in point for us is we have traditionally, well, I've been in business for 8 years, and we have traditionally offered document translation, interpreting, and cross coaching. But more recently, based on requests that I've gotten over the years and resisted, we started to offer Spanish for business classes, and we got a really good response here. So that course is now ongoing. We have our first cohort, and so that was just one example also to respond to the question. Paul, have skills, and we just have to sort of think about what maybe were we resisting before. Now it turns out I'm not teaching it, even though I did tutor for years. I was no longer interested in that part of the service. So I did bring on board a fantastic tutor who is handling it, and we manage all the other details of the program. So it is possible. We just have to take the time and be brave to try something new.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for that testimony. Thank you very much of taking the skills and transferring it to another arena. Same set of skills, but doing it differently. And I think to the examples, of course, of people taking their businesses online, you know, coaching clients, all of a sudden they could do a Zoom call, whereas before you would have to go to their offices. There are lots of opportunities. It does require us to be a little fearless. It does require us to grieve the old, you know, in terms of, I used to have so many clients a week. You know, I met an optometrist the other day, and he was telling me, he said, Maxine, you know, we are only open on Fridays. Oh, that's the only day where we're open. So of course he had seen a decline in his business. He had to basically change his address, you know, move to a smaller apartment in a cheaper area. And I'm bringing that up to say that as humans, we have a great capacity for adaptability. And yes, the change may not be what we would like. I mean, we might have to drink Prosecco instead of champagne, or rum instead of scotch. And even with those changes, it doesn't make us a failure. It doesn't mean that we are less than we are. And so one of the things is that, you know, what do we attach to those things? So that when we have to change, it makes it difficult for us to give it up. You know, part of it is that we have to grieve the things we lost. And while we grieve, we have to embrace the new. And this is a time where it is about saying, what is new? What can I take with my, all of whom I am and all the things that I can do? What can I do differently? What is it that I need to hold on to, and what is it I need to let go of? And what are the multiple realities that can exist at the same time that keeps me moving forward? It is a time to have courage, because of course, I mean, come June 30th, those of us who have mortgages, we're going to be required to go back into mortgage situations. And even people who took, you know, a little break from the bank because of loans or whatever, we know that that interest is going to come to hit us. And we have to have courage, and we have to have optimism that tomorrow we'll be alive and we'll push a little bit more. You know, things take time. This is a huge adjustment. The uncertainty and the anxiety. I could tell you for 2 weeks, I was like, I'm not going to any seminars. I'm not trying to learn anything new. I am just resting because this is a lot, right? So we all have our different ways of dealing with it. and there's no good and bad way of dealing with it. And at some point in time, we wake up and say, what's next for me? And looking around and saying, you know, I could peel mangoes really well. Maybe now I'll have to peel pineapples. There will be a learning curve, and eventually, just as I peeled mangoes, I can definitely peel pineapples.
Definitely, Maxine. Maxine, listen, it's been a pleasure. I think at this juncture, I'd like to end, but I want to end with two comments from two people who I think pretty much hit the nail on the head with respect to pretty much what you have discussed earlier. So I'm going to start with Keisha Krishan. She said a key element of adapting to the new normal is accepting failure until uncertainties become a little less certain and until employees become familiar with the new ways of working. And there's one here I saw from, all right, let me just get the name, from Alison P. She said, we need to work on fostering trusting relationships with staff. Staff must be able to trust the process, which will feed directly into motivation and effect the results needed. Everyone is a star, not only the glaring ones. And that certainly alludes pretty much to what it is you would have discussed earlier in your presentation. So at this juncture, at this time, with the blessings of the organizers, I'd like to take some time to, first of all, thank the hosts of the hosting organizations of tonight's forum. Thank you very much for this wonderful, much needed initiative. Thank you for having me again. Our featured speaker, Maxine Attong, for giving us much to think about as business leadership moving into the new normal through a very informative and concise presentation. To our hands-on organizers, forum administrators, Melissa, Maria, for ensuring that things were organized and run pretty smoothly. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, for your questions, your ideas, your shared experiences, your comments, your recommendations as we move forward. We are all richer for it, certainly. And I would like you to look out for more such initiatives put on by tonight's host organizations, and feel free to spread the word to other members as well. Ladies and gentlemen, as I end,
Desmond, can I just say something before you go?
Sure.
I just wanted to recognize Nadia Bihari and Michelle Carrington and Judy Joseph Maxine. I mean, those are people who I actually do know, and I haven't seen Nadia in years. So Nadia, it's great to see you here on the call. So, and I just want to say thank you to the organizers for having me. And of course, I'm here whenever you need it. If anybody else has a question or comment, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I usually respond. So thanks a lot. It's always great to share ideas.
Thank you very much, Maxine. So ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying, as I end, I'm hoping you and your families keep safe. Have a wonderful evening. See you the next time. Good evening.